You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
This is That's Another Miami Dolphins First Down podcast with Stephen Daniels and special guest Josh Moser. What's up, baby? Stephen Daniels live here on That's Another Miami Dolphins First Down podcast. My good friend Josh Moser here. We're just hanging. Another Tuesday, another episode of That's Another Miami Dolphins First Down. Super excited to be hanging out with y'all tonight. What's going on, Josh? How's it going?
It's going great. Down here in Miami, sun is shining in late December, and of course, huge game this week. Chance to lock up the number one spot for now. So
it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Very, very high. And that game against the Cowboys was, man, that was awesome.
It was.
The city, great atmosphere, great finish.
They're ready to party. This city's ready to party. Like, this city is on the verge of, like, okay, we're here. Because, like, remember, we haven't been here in 30 years, Josh. Like, this is all new territory for Dolphins fans. All new territory.
Live in history. We're talking about meeting people that weren't even born the last time this team won a playoff game 22 years ago. And right now, expectations are high.
They are. They're very high. But before we get into that, let's recap this last game. We had a big game against the Dallas Cowboys on Christmas Eve. Hope your Christmas went well, by the way. I got LeBron James stuff, just so you know. I got some really cool LeBron.
Fancy.
Not that person behind you. I'm going to have to get you something that says LeBron all in the background. We're going to just paint over that Jordan stuff. Anyways, let me focus in on hand. Let's recap in our thoughts of the Dallas Cowboys game. What stuck out to you in this game, Josh?
The defense. I mean, we've talked all season about the offensive weapons on the team, but this is a defensive team, top 5 in the league right now. That Deshaun Elliott play early on the goal line, saving a touchdown, and the forced fumble, that was absolutely huge. We're seeing Bradley Chubb really come into his own and validate the huge contract extension they gave him after they traded for him last season. But they have been playing very, very well. And remember, this team has lost a lot. They lost Jalen Phillips. They lost Jerome Baker. They've been playing without Javon Holland. So to be where they're at, given all of the injuries that have taken place, you've got to tip your cap to Chris Greer. And, you know, the secret sauce is just the camaraderie in this locker room. I have covered the NFL for 15 years, covered all sports. And the teams that win championships, they get along. They have that something special between them. And I can really sense that in the locker room. And I think that's what's going to separate this team. And I truly believe that we should see our first playoff win for the Dolphins in more than 2 decades this year.
I definitely want to agree with you. Josh Moser, myself, Stephen Daniels. That's Another Miami Dolphins First Down podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit the like button if you haven't done so already. And if you're not, come over to YouTube and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That way you get notified anytime we drop a new podcast or news breaks or anything that's Miami Dolphin related. This is where you want to be. One of the other things that stuck out for me was this kicker. Maybe you've heard of him. His name is Jason Sanders, and he had a career game. 3 kicks over 50 yards, one of them being his new career long of 57. He scored 5. He made 5 field goals. And when he hit the game winner, he threw up the 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5. And I'm telling you, Jason Sanders, I remember on my show on Clock Blockers, the fans saying as little as 6-7 weeks ago, we need to get a new kicker. Well, I mean, that narrative has changed, especially after this past game. Tell me what your thoughts about Jason.
I think Jason deserves a lot more credit than people actually give him. Remember, he was an all-pro in 2020. And once he had that year, I think people set expectations so high. But when you actually talk to the players, Stephen, it's about the hold and it's about the snapper. So Blake Ferguson, Jake Bailey, the 3 of them have really figured this thing out. Bailey coming over. This is his first year. Remember, he replaced Thomas Morstead. But the 3 of these guys have played really, really well. They're very succinct, and they like their routine. And Sanders has been up and down at times. But when you make kicks like you did in this game, it cements yourself as one of the best in the league. I know Justin Tucker will be on the other side. I think Mason Crosby is a great example. Veteran kicker for the Packers. They let him go because he was making too much money, bounced around, ended up kicking for the Giants this last week. Was on the team for 2 days, and he's putting them through the uprights. So a kicker is a very, very important piece to this team, and I think Sanders showed why. And I just loved Christian Wilkins putting him on his shoulders in the locker room. I love that he got carried off. I mean, this was a huge, huge moment for him personally, a huge, huge moment for everybody in this locker room, because it has been a long time since this team has been in the position that they're in. And I think the team isn't taking this for granted, Sanders being one of them. And they realize what they've accomplished, what they have yet to accomplish. And with 2 weeks to go, I mean, this is it. This is go time, and we're going to learn a lot about this team in the next 2 weeks.
Jason Sanders' personal kicking coach, Coach Brandon Kornblue, I had him on my morning show a few months back. And it's kind of funny, you alluded to the snap and the hold. And the one thing that the Dolphins have had for the past 3 years is a different punter, which means that they've had a different holder for Jason the last 3 years. And so Jake Bailey, one of the things that was on social media that I've seen, and I know this sounds weird, but his hands are a little bit smaller than some of the other punters that have gone through the ranks here. Thomas Morstead, obviously, Michael Turk was here for, a cup of coffee in training camp, and a couple of other people. So, I think the thing for Jake Bailey, he's been the difference maker with the success of Jason Sanders too, because it's those little minute details of how that ball's held and how it, and obviously Blake Ferguson being one of the best long snappers in the game, that helps as well. So, and Coach Kornblue alluded to it. You want success for a kicker, have consistency with your holder and your long snapper, and that's what makes a good kicking game. And hey, look, it paved the way for the Dolphins to get the win this past Sunday against the Cowboys. You agree, right?
I do. Yeah.
All right. Well, one of the things that made Sunday so great is the playoff picture kind of showed itself to us, right? And so the playoff picture is here just a little bit, but we have 11 wins for the first time in years. And if we win on Sunday against the Baltimore Ravens, which we'll get to later, it'll be 12 wins, which I think the last time the Dolphins had 12 wins was 1990. So yep. It's been a long time since we have been in this double digit with a couple weeks left to go and playing for the 1 seed. Right now, the Dolphins cannot be the 4 seed and they cannot be the 7 seed. But just looking around the NFL, there's only 3 teams that can play for the number 1 seed. The Baltimore Ravens, who we play on Sunday, us, and the Cleveland Browns, believe it or not, can play for the number 1 seed. What do you think about the playoff picture right now?
It says a lot about the Cleveland Browns, what they've lost. I mean, Nick Chubb, your quarterback, and Deshaun Watson. How about Joe Flacco? Robert Saleh saying today, hey, it didn't work out in New York, but it's like, man, I mean, you let this guy walk. It's crazy to me. 38 years old, Joe Flacco, the success that he's had, and Amari Cooper's from down here, beloved in South Florida.
Yep.
And he goes off for the career game, franchise records for Browns receiving last week. I think the Browns have done a really good job. Their GM has done a really, really good job. And that franchise has been, the punching bag, basically the AFC for a long time, going way, way back to Dorsey being the GM. It took Baker Mayfield with the number 1 overall pick. Everybody remembers the picture imitating Brett Favre when he skipped the draft, stayed at home with his family. But, kudos to them. That being said, for them to get the 1 seed, the Ravens would have to lose this game. And then I believe they play the Steelers in the final week. Mike Tomlin's got the Steelers playing pretty well despite everything that's gone on there. It's crazy that they're in the playoff picture. It's crazy the Colts are in the playoff picture right now, even though they lost to the Jaguars. So I think there's a big gap once you pass the 3 teams we've alluded to, the Ravens, the Dolphins, and the Browns, surprisingly, at 10-5. And, we really saw the Chiefs fall off this week. I mean, to lose to the Raiders at home, you give up 2 defensive touchdowns, basically spot them 14 points. Tyreek Hill is here. They got all of those picks, but they are missing the cheetah tremendously in Kansas City, and you can see it all over Mahomes' face. He's just not the same guy, even though he's hands down probably the best quarterback in the league. But I think the Dolphins are seeing the best quarterback in the league this week, and that's Lamar Jackson. They've won 9 out of their last 10. This is the hottest team coming in. And when you talk historically about the Ravens, their defense is what separates them. They are long, they are rangy, they are physical, and they are fast, and they blew up a San Francisco offensive line. And right now with the Dolphins, that's an area where you're dealing with a lot of injuries. Connor Williams is out. Robert Hunt hasn't played. You've got Robert Jones battling with injuries. Teron Armstead is in and out of the lineup. Got Liam Eichenberg playing center, which is not his natural position. So you've got to keep Tua upright. We've seen the statistics where he's phenomenal when he's got a clean pocket. And you forget Jadeveon Clowney's on this team.
Yep.
Patrick Queen is an absolute monster in the middle. I mean, they've got players at all 3 levels of this defense. We saw Brock Purdy throw 4 interceptions, and he was an MVP candidate, everybody. Cam Newton called him a game manager. He called Tua a game manager, but the Ravens' game plan going into last night was very, very good. They executed, and this defense is lights out. So we're going to find out a lot about this Dolphins team. I think this is going to be a phenomenal game.
The playoff picture, a couple of things you alluded to, and I just want to point them out. Number one, divisional opponents, right? You alluded to the Vegas Raiders beating the Kansas City Chiefs. I always tell fans, and I say it on my show a lot, records be damned. They go out the window when you face a divisional opponent. For years, the Miami Dolphins were mediocre at best, but we always knew how to play Tom Brady and the Patriots. And the most success against the Patriots were the Dolphins for years. And I think it's just because nobody knows you better than divisional opponents, right? I think we're the better football team by far and away than Buffalo, but Buffalo's a divisional opponent, and they know how to play us, and they know our strengths, and they know our weaknesses, and that's what makes us vulnerable to a team like Buffalo, who I think we're superior to. Now, with that being said, looking around the NFL, you talked about, the Steelers will have to face the Ravens in the last week. Nobody knows the Ravens better than Mike Tomlin. Nobody, and all of that stuff kind of helps. So, but the Dolphins are in their own driver's seat, and that's what makes this very interesting. Looking at the playoff picture, Miami's in full control. You win out, you're in. You're in the number 1 seed. Nobody can tell you anything. There's nothing that anybody can say to tell you what type of team you are or not, as long as you win out. You want to talk about the MVP, which we'll get to in a little while. That's also going to be played on Sunday as well. Lamar versus Tua. I think the winner of this game will have the lead in the MVP situation, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But one of the other things that you talked about was injuries. And one of the things that happened on this Sunday was Jalen Waddle's injury. And I want to get to that a little bit. What can you tell us about Waddle's injury, and where do you see it going for the next couple of weeks?
We spoke to Mike McDaniel yesterday. The team had the day off today, so we'll speak to him again tomorrow. But McDaniel said it's at a high ankle sprain. So that is a week's type of injury, anywhere from 2 to 8, depending on the grade. Grade 1 is slight. Grade 2 is severe but not completely torn. Grade 3 is completely torn all the way through, surgery required. So we don't know where Waddle is on this. We know Waddle, I feel bad for him. I mean, during this stretch, he took 2 shots back-to-back games in the chest, and then he got poked in the eye to start this last game. Then he was up and down with the ankle. So, I mean, he's been dealing with a lot, and all of these nicks and bruises since week 1 are really starting to add up, and you just hope that he can get healthy. But the question is, as a receiver, and what makes him special, the same with Tyreek, is his ability to cut and move laterally, in addition to take the top off speed. But when you're dealing with a high ankle sprain, that ability to go laterally goes out the window. The best example for people in South Florida that are watching is Tyler Hero with the Heat. He turned his ankle, high ankle sprain. He missed more than 5 weeks of basketball. And you're talking about receivers needing to do basketball-type moves when they get off the line to create that separation. And that first step, that explosive first step, is the most critical move of the entire route. So that type of force on the ankle, it's just tough. Tyreek talked this week that he had to take vitamin T, which is Toradol. It's basically makes you numb. You don't have any feeling in your leg. You just go. And then what happens is whatever damage you did, you go in the next day and you try to get out that swelling. But now it's maintenance and managing that. And that's where Jalen Waddle's going to be. So the good news is they have a week to prepare. So I think really what hurt the Dolphins a couple weeks ago in the loss to Tennessee was when Tyreek got hurt. I don't think there was a backup plan to say, oh, crap, what do we do now that Tyreek's out? Because he hadn't missed a game.
Correct.
So then all of a sudden Mike McDaniel came up with a plan for the next game against the Jets. We knew that Tyreek was going to be down, and he was able to put Jalen Waddle in those types of positions. What we also have to talk about with this Waddle injury, if he can't go, is we don't know about Robbie Chosen. I mean, we saw him play early in this game.
Yep.
He's in concussion protocol. So if he can't go, that leaves you with Cedric Wilson, Braxton Berrios. You've got Chase Claypool, who really hasn't played much.
River Craycraft,
who's more of in the slot, but they like him blocking. So those are your options. I think the tight end Durham Smythe coming off a career game for him. 5 catches was the most he's had. And we saw what George Kittle did against this team on Monday night. Now, I'm not saying that Durham Smythe is George Kittle, but Mike McDaniel is going to have to maneuver his pieces. And remember, Raheem Mostert's dealing with a shin injury. They held him out of most of the second half of this last game against the Cowboys. So Waddle really hurts you. Waddle's really a number 1 receiver, but he's your number 2. And that's what's made this team special. You need him. He's got the special connection with Tua going back to the Alabama days. And then Tyreek obviously is going to see double coverage. So now you're going to ask Tyreek Hill on an ankle that we really don't know what percentage is to beat double coverage against this hard-hitting secondary. And I'm very curious to see how Mike McDaniel maneuvers his pieces and figures out how to scheme up something to get Tyreek open, because you have to put the ball in his hands. You have to find a way to let him create. You can't use him as a decoy. He's too good.
I think that Chase Claypool's going to have a breakout game. One of the things that we saw, there's a shot of McDaniel after the field goal. And you see in the background, you see Chase Claypool celebrating more than anybody else on that sideline, a man who played 3 offensive snaps. And, I think he's bought in, right? And that was one of the red flags potentially of him coming here. Is he going to buy into the locker room? Is he going to be a locker room guy? And I think that he has. I think the answer is yes, he's been fine. But I think this is a perfect and prime opportunity to allow a guy like Chase Claypool to take that next step in this offense. And I think it could happen this Sunday.
Yeah, I think he's the guy. And I mean, Cedric Wilson has made some big time catches. I think he's automatically your number 2 target. But Chase Claypool would be an X factor. We've seen him line up a couple times on offense, and why he hasn't played is because he didn't know the play. He didn't know where to line up. Didn't know if he was on or off the line. We saw a couple penalties from him. So hopefully with more weeks in the system, remember they did trade for him. He hasn't had a full season. It does take time. It's a very complex offense. But yes, this would be a prime opportunity. But again, River Craycraft, despite his injury.
What about Eric Azukama too? Eric Azukama has been somebody that was supposed to take that next step this year, and he hasn't.
Yeah, they're keeping him with his neck injury. Yeah, he's not going to be available. Yeah. So they're going to keep him for next year. But the familiarity with River Craycraft and the trust that he has is going to be another piece. He's proven. That's why he's on the team, and he can block. So it also changes things, because if you move Chase Claypool to offense, he plays a significant role on special teams. And when you talk to Danny Crossman, when you're moving guys up and down, it's very, very difficult, because there are certain special teams players that have specific roles, and Chase Claypool is now one of those core guys. So one move influences the other, and we're going to have to see what they decide to do when we get our first look tomorrow at practice.
That's another Miami Dolphins First Down podcast. Stephen Daniels and Josh Moser here on Dolphins Talk. Make sure you're hitting that like button if you haven't done so already, and subscribe to the channel. One of the things I want to get into is team accomplishments. The Miami Dolphins have done some things this year already with 2 games left to go in the regular season, Josh, that this franchise has never seen. There have been a couple 1,000-yard receivers, over a 4,000-yard passer, and 1,000-yard rusher. Let's start out with the 2 receivers over 1,000 yards, Waddle and Tyreek. What do you think about these 2 guys getting over 1,000 yards?
I mean, they're special. I think, especially with the way that Tyreek started, you didn't think that Jalen would get there because you wanted to force feed Tyreek. But we're talking about Jalen Waddle having 1,000 yards in each of his first 3 seasons. He's the first player in Dolphins history to do that. It validates taking him in the first round, very high as a top 10 pick. The hope is that he can just stay healthy, because when he's healthy, he's a legitimate number 1 guy as a number 2, and that's why it works so well. Tyreek Hill, hands down the best receiver in the game right now. You could argue Justin Jefferson, but Tyreek is a game-changing player. The defensive coordinator and the defense needs to know where number 10 is on the field at all times. And I think that by having Tyreek Hill, as much as Jalen Waddle would love to get the ball more, I think the tandem of the 2 of them, it's pick your poison. And I think they are a perfect combination. And it has been special to see the timing, and especially how quickly and how far in advance Tua throws the ball to both of them to a spot and then lets them run underneath. The trust, especially these balls over the middle in between 3 defenders, it has been awesome to watch. And, I know they say Mark Clayton, Mark Duper. I think this is the best wide receiver duo in the NFL this season. And I think it's the best wide receiver duo in Dolphins franchise history overall in a single season. And
that's a hot take. It is Tuesday. That is a hot take Tuesday take there, Josh Moser.
Well, let me put it like this. Tyreek Hill, I tweeted this out. I'm looking at it. He needs 70 receiving yards to break his own record for a single season. So I'm going to assume that he gets that in the next 2 games. And if Jalen Waddle misses this game, okay, then we go into the finale. If he plays or not, we don't know. But the 2 of them together, like we've seen when Tyreek was down, we saw Waddle just ascend. I mean, the talent is there. When one goes down, the other steps up. I mean, these 2 are 2 probably top. Tyreek is the top. I think he's the best receiver, and I would put Waddle probably in the top 10. I mean, and definitely.
I don't disagree with you. I 100% back.
I would probably. And I mean, no, he's without a doubt the number 1, number 2 receiver in the league. You could argue, his former college teammate Devonta Smith with A.J. Brown. You could argue Brandon Ayuk. And
no, it's Waddle. Waddle would be a number 1 on probably 20 other teams in the NFL.
Totally.
Easy.
Totally. Easy. I might even say, yeah, I mean, really outside of Brown, Jefferson, I'm taking him over Amari Cooper, even though he's a SoFlo Pro guy. I'm taking him over D-Hop this year. Everybody, DK Metcalf in Seattle, I'm taking Waddle just because of his speed.
What's his face in Vegas?
Devontae.
Devontae,
I would probably take over Waddle just because of the experience and what Devontae. You have to game plan for Devontae. Just Devontae is a top 3 receiver to me. He's special with what he can do.
Some people in the chat are saying T. Higgins ?
Yeah, I mean, look at what T. Higgins has done. I mean, with Jamar Chase going down, and you're talking Joe Burrow not being there. I mean, he's having a phenomenal season. I would put him behind Waddle just because the numbers that Waddle's putting up. I'm still taking Waddle, but T. Higgins had a great year. I love that in the chat though. That's valid. I like that.
All right, now somebody else who's having a career year. You put all his first 8 seasons in the NFL. He's not doing what he's doing now, and that's Raheem Moser. And he's got over 1,000 yards, 20+ touchdowns. The value of Raheem in this offense. Tell me your thoughts about Raheem.
I think he's an amazing person. His character is really high. He's the type of guy, when he walks into the room, everybody just gets happier. You see him, you smile. He's infectious. And I know that doesn't mean anything on a stat sheet, but that pays a lot of dividends in the huddle. When you look at Raheem, he's like, I got you. Give me this. And at 31 years old, they call him, the grandpa. He's got 3 kids. And, he's just the savvy old head, as Tua refers to him. He's kind of the calm, because Tyreek's high energy, Tua does his own thing, and then you're dealing with Teron Armstead, who is just one of the funniest dudes ever. But Raheem is like the glue. He's the one that is just steady Eddie. And when he gets into the open field, we've seen what he can do. What's crazy, though, did you know that Jeff Wilson Jr. is making more money than Raheem Mostert this year?
No, I did not know that.
Jeff Wilson Jr.
Jeff Wilson is buying dinner every time they go somewhere, is what you're saying. That's what better happen.
It's not much, but he's getting paid more. Raheem's making like $2 million. I mean, you want to talk about
to be fair, we've had this conversation. We had this conversation in episode 1. Veteran running backs, or running backs, period, in the NFL are not paid what their value is according to fans and players. But owners and GMs, they devalue, is the word I would use, running backs in the NFL, which is why I asked you last week, Josh, do you think that he's going to get a contract? And your answer to me was he'll probably stay with the Miami Dolphins because it's unlikely he will get a bag somewhere else.
Yeah, and he's got 1 year left on his deal. And the two of us sat down this week before the Cowboys game, and he believes that a large reason for the success he's having this season is because of the system. This is a perfect fit for him. He has a longstanding relationship with Mike McDaniel. Fun fact, he was a former Raven. Zach Sealer, former Raven. Deshaun Elliott, former Raven. So a couple ties this week. But Raheem is having an all-pro season, not a Pro Bowl. He's in a all-pro, and I'm really happy for him.
First team all-pro. I don't care what anybody says. First team all-pro.
Yeah, he's great. And if you could have a team full of Raheem Mosterts with the personality and character, you would have a very good organization. You look for people like him.
Hopefully we can get him on the show one day. Big fan of Raheem myself.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get on to another guy who's having a career year, and I'm a huge fan of, and that's Tua. Over 4,000 passing yards, currently sitting like 4,219 yards, something like that. I think he's got it's about 200 or 300 more than second place. Look, his numbers are there, and what he's doing is the same thing that you said about Raheem being a product of this offense. Tua, I think, is a product of the way this offense was designed and built, and it's making him out to be one of, if not one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, Tua's having a career year, and it comes at a phenomenal time. You rewind the clock, nobody thought that he was even going to play this season. People were telling him to retire after all of the concussions he had last season. And then we heard about the jiu-jitsu training. You talk about the work that he did with Nick Hicks at Perform here up in Fort Lauderdale. And if you talk to Tua and you see how stout his lower body is and the changes that he's made in his body. He looks physically like a completely different player. And you forget, Tua's still very young. Tua's, 24, 25. He's got next year the guaranteed money. That's the window. It's this year and next year, because Tua's going to command a bag, and the Dolphins should pay him, especially after what he's done this season. He's having the best season since Dan Marino in a Dolphins uniform. He's setting all of these types of records. Mike McDaniel is the perfect fit for him. Those two go together so well, and it's just awesome to see. I've never covered a player where he's changed so much from his rookie season until now, his fourth season. I'm talking both on and off the field. He was Sabanized at Alabama. You bring in Mike McDaniel.
Sabanized, I like that.
Yeah, he's been rejuvenated, and he's finally himself, and you can see him actually, having fun and being himself, and it's just awesome to watch. You want to root for guys like that, and now he's married. He has a son. He's got a second baby on the way, and you just see him live in the moment. And what I love about Tua that really sticks out to me this year is when he makes a mistake, short memory, and it's gone, and then you see an amazing play.
Yep.
That is so hard to do as a professional athlete. I don't care what sport it is. To move on to the next play like that is you're taught it, it's coached, but it is really, really hard to do. And Tua's taken ownership of everything, and I love how he's leading this team. I think Chris Greer, again, has the right people around him, and then the leadership from Mike McDaniel. It seems like, everything is coming together at the perfect time, and you just hope that this team can stay healthy, because if this team is at 100% and you're playing at home, I don't think anybody's beating the Dolphins.
I would 100% agree with you on that, and I agree with you. Part of the X factor, what seems to be the secret sauce of this team, starts with the guy with the number 1 on his back and plays quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. And I'm such a huge fan of what he is on and off the field. You talk about another guy who's great in the locker room and great off the field. Tua resonates that in everything that he does. And I'm such a huge fan. I'm good. Look, when he came, I remembered, little quick story time, when he came into the game for the New York Jets for his NFL appearance. And I turned to my daughter, who just turned 8, and said, honey, this is the guy that's going to bring us a Super Bowl one day. I remember that clear as day. And here we are on the verge of it. Let me ask you, Tua this Sunday has a very good opportunity to showcase to the world how valuable he really is according to the league in the NFL. What do you think about Tua's MVP odds going into this Sunday's game?
I think he's number 3 right now, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. I want to say it's Lamar. Is Christian McCaffrey 2?
2, yep. And then 2 or 3.
And then it's 2. I mean, look, it's a quarterback award. I think even though it was a win over the Jets without Tyreek Hill, I think Tua shined in that contest. The rhetoric was that Tua would not be doing what he's doing without Tyreek, and we saw him play really, really well without Tyreek. I think a lot of this has to do with the system, because of how quickly Mike McDaniel has designed his plays to get the ball out of Tua's hands. And this makeshift offensive line that has had, I think we're double-digit combinations now through the season. Tua has shined. And you're going to have a few interceptions. You're going to have a few mistakes. But overall, I think if Tua plays really, really well in this game, and if they beat the Baltimore Ravens like the Ravens just beat the 49ers last night, I think Tua is your odds-on favorite to win the MVP.
I would agree with that, but I'll take it one step further. I don't even think they have to beat them the way that they beat the 49ers. I think the winner of the game will be the odds-on favorite personally. We'll get into the game of how we think it's going to go later, but as far as Tua is concerned, his numbers are better than Lamar's, and that's and I include Lamar's rushing yards and touchdowns rushing in that. Tua still is more valuable, in my opinion, to the success of the team than Lamar is for his, just based on the numbers alone. They're both valuable. They're both important. I think that Tua is more important, in my opinion, because, look, even when they were bad the last few years, Tyler Huntley stepped in and made the Pro Bowl without – Lamar wasn't there. He was hurt. Tyler Huntley made a Pro Bowl. Now, I know that's a, gimme award, whatever it is. Take it for what it's worth.
Everybody got hurt. Tua made the Pro Bowl last year.
So I hear you. I understand. But look, my personal opinion is Tua is more valuable to the Dolphins than Lamar is to the Ravens.
If that is true, the Dolphins are going to have to pay Tua $60 million a year after this contract.
They're going to pay him a bag. That's going to happen. You can't escape that.
Yeah, which is wild. He's represented by Athletes First. Part of me, and this is just a feeling. The way that Tua is, I could almost see Tua taking less money because of no state tax and because of his demeanor and what he wants, depending on what happens with this team. If they don't win the Super Bowl, I could see Tua leaving some money on the table to go out and pay other people and make sure Mike McDaniel stays with him than to just go out and pull a contract like Deshaun Watson. I have no insight on that. That is just a feeling that I have based off of knowing the guy. Now, it might be David Mulgeta negotiating this, and he's just going to get Tua the most amount of money. But I could see Tua stepping in and saying, let me save some money for some other people. I want to win this, and I want Mike McDaniel, and these are the pieces that I want. This is how I want to do it. I could see that happening.
I think that it'll be a very interesting offseason in March when that starts because we're playing till February.
I like that.
You see what I
Christian
did there,
Wilkins,
Josh?
number 1, Andrew Van Ginkel, 1A.
Yes, 100% on that. Yes, 100% on that. Salt already got his contract. Now it's time for Pepper to get his. Okay.
Yes. If this were a contract year for Salt, though, Sealer.
Oh my God, he would have got way
Sealer
more
getting
than
paid
what he got.
$15 million a year the way he's been playing. He's represented by Drew Rosenhaus. If I were Drew, I'm going back to Dolphins saying, hey, you got to give this guy some incentive because he's way undervalued.
It's so funny you bring that up. So this is when X went to the Dolphins 3 years in a row, right? 3 off seasons in a row. He went back to the Dolphins asking for more and more money. And the second year he did it, I remember having the conversation on my show saying, look, he is setting a precedent that's not necessarily good for the teams. And the Dolphins are putting up with it because they love X and I think that they like him and they want that marriage to stay intact and work. And he was very important to the rebuild and the locker room culture and everything. He's a good guy when it comes to that. At least that's my view of it. Looking at X, he set a precedent that allows players that even after they get the contract that they do, if they have a career year, they can walk right back into a GM's office and say, you did it for X. Why not me? So I could 100% see a world where Seiler and Rosenhaus are going to Chris Grier saying, hey, man, I know we just signed on the dotted line less than 12 months ago, but did you see what my man did this year? Go look.
Yeah, I mean, Drew also has Andrew Van Ginkel. He's got Duke Riley, too. I think Duke Riley's done a really good job filling in for Jerome Baker, who Drew also represents. So, yeah, it'll be very, very interesting. But
Drew's going to be a busy man with the Dolphins this offseason. That's what that sounds like, Josh.
I think, oh, yeah, he's got Chris Grier on speed dial, and Chris has got him on speed dial. But we're going to worry about those conversations, like you said, in March, because if Jalen Waddle can get healthy and if Rob Hunt can get healthy, if Javon Holland can get healthy, if this team's at 100%, like I said, and they play at home, this team's going to the Super Bowl. It's just a matter of how close to 100% can they be, and can they beat the Ravens this weekend?
All right. Well, I know we got you. We're a little pressed for time, but I want to make sure I get into everything. One of the things I want to get into is Bradley Chubb. Let's kind of switch gears a little bit. The man is at double-digit sacks now. First time since, I believe, Jason Taylor or Cameron Wake, Cameron Wake in 2016. You know, how big is Bradley Chubb and these sacks, and how many more do you think he'll get in the last couple of games?
I think he's at 11.
Yeah.
And you've got Josh Allen, and they're going to be up for that game regardless. I could see him ending with 14. I think 14 is the number. But I'm going to say 15 for Jalen Phillips, because
I like that, Josh. I like it.
Bradley Chubb had 15 written on his hat. Emmanuel Ogbah, who didn't play this last week, they're doing this for Jalen. I mean, they understand how special of a player Jalen Phillips is. Obviously, former first-round pick, tears the Achilles against the Jets. That's a special room. And I think the front four with Andrew Van Ginkel replacing Jalen Phillips is arguably the best defensive front four in the NFL. And you put Jalen Phillips on that line, I think you're far and above number one. And that's been the difference on this team. And I go to the combine every year, and I talk to a lot of coaches and general managers. And in talking to everybody, they all say the same thing. The most important thing in building a football team and the hardest position to find is big guys that can move on the offensive and defensive line. That is the hardest person to find. That's why Aaron Donald got paid all that money. Those are special types of players. So
Bradley Chubb, and it's great because we have Bradley Chubb and we're going to get Phillips back next year. And if that doesn't get your heart going and fluttering, I don't know what will as a football fan, because they're excited.
Christian Wilkins, I don't think is walking out the building. I think they'll figure it out. But yeah, that front four is very, very good. And Bradley Chubb, just as a leader in the locker room, he's a really cool dude. He fits in really well. Again, just another glue guy, not a problem. Like, he's got infectious energy. He's one of my favorite people to talk to. I make sure to say hi to him all the time. He's a special dude, special player, and obviously has the background with Vic Fangio going back to Denver. But there's a reason Chris Greer traded for him. And right now, I think he's worth every penny of the $100+ million extension he was given. And
100%. And the first round pick. I don't want to hear anything about Roquan Smith anymore, ever again.
No, the interesting guy to me is going to be Raekwon Davis. I mean, he was a second-round pick out of Alabama. I think he's honestly underperformed for where he was drafted. His contract's coming up. But again, I mean, you're talking about a dude that's 6'7", 335 pounds.
Can't find that every day.
Big guy that can move. But I love Bradley Chubb. You know, he's a cornerstone of this team, and he brings people together. And I hope that I hope that Hard Knocks features his personality. I hope that he's on tonight, because people need to get to know Bradley Chubb off the field and learn and figure out who he is, because he's somebody that you would want to spend a lot of time with.
Well, for the first time ever, Hard Knocks will be featured in the postseason, so that'll be very, very exciting.
Beautiful.
All right, it is. Let's do game outlook for Sunday versus the Ravens. What do the Dolphins need to do to get a victory in Baltimore?
They have to win the turnover margin first and foremost. I would say going on the road, taking care of the football is number one priority, especially after what we saw the Ravens do to Brock Purdy on Monday night. That is number one. Number two is the defense just has to play like they've been playing. I think that the Ravens don't have the skill players. I love Zay Flowers, rookie from here. Bateman, so-so. We really haven't seen much from Odell. Mark Andrews is out. So, you know, this is going to be won by defense. And we're talking about a top 5 defensive unit right now for the Dolphins, and they need to play like they played last week. That play from Deshaun Elliott still was incredible on the goal line in the first quarter. I'm more concerned about the defense needing to play better than the offense, because they're going to need to put up points, but this game is going to be won by the defense. I don't see the Dolphins going out and throwing the ball all over the yard. They need to be methodical. They need to use the run game. They need to mix it up. They need to dominate the clock. And this game will be won by the Dolphins defense. And 2 is number one priority. Don't turn the ball over.
I would 100% agree with you on that. Look, my opinion is this game's going to be won and lost in defense. You know, it's going to be how can they contain Lamar? What can they do to make sure that the defense obviously does it? Look, Zay Flowers is the best wide receivers Baltimore's had maybe ever. And that 1-2 combo of Odell and Zay Flowers, that's the best wide receiver combination they may have ever had in their franchise history. So, I mean, go back and look. Steve Smith is the best wide receiver that they've probably had. And then there was another guy named Michael Jackson in the 90s, right when they came there in the late 90s. And that's it. They've struggled to have wide receivers. But Zay Flowers, he's that X factor, right? And he's somebody that can be big. But as far as the defense is concerned for us, we contain Lamar and we make sure that Zay Flowers doesn't go out and get going. I think that, again, just like you were alluding to it, that front four, can they get and contain Lamar? Because the one thing that San Francisco didn't do the other night was contain Lamar. And he was able to run around and throw it all over the place.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of people have been talking about, why don't you put Jalen Ramsey on whoever the best receiver is and just lock him up and shut him down? So I asked Mike McDaniel this on Monday, and he was basically saying that by shadowing a player, it gives away the defense. You know that you're in man. So with Fangio's system and how he uses his blitz packages, it's forces the quarterback not to know what the defense is pre-snap. So I don't expect anybody to be shadowing anybody, because Lamar is going to be the focus in this game. And it's going to be about containing him. But I'm very curious to see what Vic Fangio tries to do. I can see Cater Kohu coming on a couple blitz packages out of the nickel, maybe bringing Duke Riley up the middle. But the way that your front four has been playing, you don't have to bring that extra guy, and that's been the strength of this defense. And I'm curious
Javon
to see
Holland
if they
play on Sunday, you think?
He's been out. I don't know. We'll check tomorrow at practice. But here's the thing. I mean, I know the picture of Brandon Jones's back's been making the round on social media where he's got this huge bruise.
That's a
and
huge
what he played
bruise.
through,
It's ugly looking.
It's nasty looking. But BJ's been playing really, really well. Nick Needham's a guy that I like, but he really didn't play well in the few snaps that he did. So I don't really see him kind of like as an option. I think they're going to keep Cater in the nickel. But I like Brandon Jones. I like Deshaun Elliott. And I thought, for what it's worth, I thought Elijah Campbell played really well in the game that he played in, and he got the looks. He had that one pass breakup where he came flying across the field and made it towards the sidelines. I think he, is
Elijah
a player.
Campbell in special teams has been great too, by the way.
It's been great, but Javon hasn't played, and I don't care how good you are. Javon Holland, to me, deserves whatever contract he, will get. He should be one of the top paid safeties in the league. He's one of the best in the position. He has a chance to be a superstar. But when you haven't played and you're dealing with 2 MCL sprains, I think it's going to take a little bit of rust. And I don't know how close he is. I don't know how close he is. I have no beat. We haven't been able to talk to him. When a player's injured, you can't talk to him. So it's a risk. But, I mean, look, hey, Jalen Ramsey went out there with a couple practices under his belt. Granted, he's a, gold jacket type of player. But he was great. He was fine. I think Javon Holland could have a career like that if he's able to sustain some longevity.
Did the game plan change in the second, third, and fourth quarter with CD Lamb from the first quarter? Because CD ran he killed us in the first quarter, but after that he was quiet.
Yeah, so the 49-yard touchdown, if you go back and you watch the film, there was a miscommunication from the Dolphins. You see 2 players go to opposite ways, then they got the communicate, and that's why he was able to get over the middle, and then he was able to use his ridiculous speed and talent to get in the end zone with the cutback and all that. But that was a Dolphins mistake on that explosive play. So you take away that explosive play, it was a 49-yard touchdown, so he had 40 yards in the first half. That was it. But so the game plan did not change. It was just more of they didn't make that same mistake twice, which is exactly what you want. It's crazy to think the difference in that game was the fumble on the goal line on the first drive. That was it. I was crazy. The other thing that was kind of weird out of that game, we didn't talk about it, the 4th and 5 on the 4th and goal for Mike McDaniel on the kind of basically the 50-50 ball to Cedric Wilson Jr. was weird on Hard Knocks. He was like, I got to call a better play than that.
And then he did the same thing again.
He did the same thing. So I was like, man, what are you doing there? I would have taken the points at that point to go down 7-6. But
he said, didn't he say in the post game, he said I should have kicked the field goal there? But I think he alluded.
That was a weird one. But at the same time, he just saw the Cowboys march all the way down the field. He's like, shoot, we're probably going to need touchdowns. Field goals aren't going to win this game. So you could argue both sides, and that's his call to make. He's the head coach.
You can play Monday morning quarterback all you want, but when you're in the moment, it's tough, because you have there's so many factors that play into it.
But it's almost like at that point, I'm taking that out of his hands. I'm saying, like, this is what the book says, and we should do this. But if you're feeling it, like, it's your call. Like, that's how I would phrase it. It's kind of like, you're going to hit or stay on 15. When the dealer's showing what? Like, this is what the book says.
There's a reason I don't gamble anymore, Josh, because I always hit, and it never worked out well for me, okay? Never worked out well.
But, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see. I'm really pumped to watch this game. This should be the most exciting game, and if Monday night is any indication last night of that game, that was the second most watched Monday Night Football game in almost 30 years.
Crazy numbers.
Crazy numbers. Granted, arguably a Super Bowl preview. This, without a doubt, in my mind, is an AFC Championship preview, whether it's being played in Baltimore or Miami. I don't see any team beating these 2 teams. This is it. This is the creme de la creme of the AFC, and you're going to have Jalen Waddle most likely out, but this is the moment, and we'll see who rises to the occasion.
Score prediction.
Nobody's going to like this. I'm going 31-28 Ravens. I love the Dolphins. I hope that I'm wrong, but it's so hard to win on the road.
It is. And that environment's crazy if you've ever been there.
If this game were at Hard Rock, I would flip it, but it is just so hard to win on the road. The only thing the Dolphins have going for them, and aside from the scheme, and I think Mike McDaniel's going to do a great job with the game plan, but this team played in San Francisco last night. They flew back today. After the game. It's a 7-hour flight. They got back early this morning, so they're coming off a short week. They're not going to practice tomorrow. They're going to be tired. Luckily, they blew out the 49ers. They rested most of their players in the fourth. But I don't know. I would love to see the Dolphins win. It's a tall task, but I think the scheme is very, very winnable. And again, I think this locker room has something special. So I hope as a fan and I hope as a person that covers this team that they win. But, they no doubt to me in my mind jump San Francisco as the Super Bowl favorites if they win this game.
Tua is 2-0. He's 2-0 against the Baltimore Ravens. Okay. And I think he will go 3-0 against the Baltimore Ravens. I think they're going to win. I don't think Tua's been down 28 points and come back and just I don't.
How about that fourth quarter last year? That was wild. That was
wild.
One of the nuttiest fourth quarters I've ever seen in my life.
I was there live, and it was amazing. It was one of the best games I've ever been to in my life. And this year, I don't think it's going to get to that level, but because I think that it's going to be a much closer game. I agree with you that the first team to 30 wins the game, but I think it's going to be the Dolphins. I think it's going to be 31-27 Miami. That's where I'm at with it. So
we're right there.
We're in the same score. Yeah,
I love it.
And ultimately, I'll be right and you'll be wrong, and we'll be, chilling and ready to go for a 3-game South Beach run. It'll be good.
You got the receipts on this. This is recorded, so
you can keep the receipts.
I'm sure that will be brought back. And I for the sake of this, I hope that I eat crow on this one. I hope that I'm wrong.
I've never wanted you to eat crow more in your life, Josh. I'm just telling you. Recap of playoff clinching scenarios. If the Dolphins win, they can't clinch the first seed automatically, but they will be the first seed. They will clinch the AFC East, and they will be at least top 2.
Yes,
if they win.
Correct? So at least 2 home games. So that's great.
Which is great.
You're talking opening round if you don't get the bye, and then you've got the second round. So
one of the other things we should talk about next week is playoff tickets and how that kind of works and what that should be like for fans and stuff, because Miami fans, we don't have much history of, as a matter of fact, I don't know when the last time we had a home playoff game was. It's been a while.
Shoot.
You had to think about it. You got to think about it.
2008 was the last time they won the division. So that's 15 years. So they would, in order to have
we lost to the Ravens,
you had to win
23-6.
So that would be 2000. It would be 2008.
Yep, and we lost to the Ravens 23-6 in the playoffs.
Yeah. Hey, there's always the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever you want to call it, Stephen Ross.
What do you got going on, man? Where can the people find you, and what do you got going on?
You can watch me 5 nights a week on Fox in Miami WSVN. You can catch me live from 4 to 7 o'clock, and again from 10 to 11:30, and then every Sunday night on Lexus Sports Extra. I host a full sports show featuring Drew Rosenhaus. We're live throughout Miami, Broward County. We're in all of the Caribbean islands. We're in South America all the way down to Aruba. If you're in Key West, you can watch it live, and then you can find me on all of the social media channels at the Mo's Nose, and most likely every Tuesday here with Steve and D. So my man, I love doing this with you. Yeah.
Air horn for you, baby. Yes.
First down all the way.
That's another Miami Dolphins First Down podcast. Josh Moser, myself, Stephen Daniels. If you are interested in this content and have a small business and want to promote it on our podcast, reach out to me at DolphinsTalk. You can always reach out to us. We'd love to be able to promote your small business, whatever it is. As a reminder, this Saturday and Sunday in Baltimore, we are hosting, or I am hosting, the Baltimore Beatdown. Just a little bit about that. Saturday night, we'll be at Jimmy's Famous Seafood from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. doing a Dolphin meet and greet. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's a free event. Go to tailgreeter.com or download the app and RSVP for the free event up there. Sunday morning, we're going to have a VIP Dolphin experience inside the famous Tailgate, which is a huge tailgate right next to the stadium. And we're going to have a VIP Miami Dolphin area inside it with our own bartenders and everything. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then we're going to have a little get together for the New Year's Eve party after the game. We're going to celebrate the win, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you want to go to tailgreeter.com or download the app. QR codes right there on your screen that you see. We'd love to see you. There's plenty of tailgate to go around, and we would love to take over Baltimore, the Baltimore Beatdown 2023. It was a good time last year.
It's style, man. You got to do it. This is it.
It's going to be a lot of fun, man. And I wish you were there. I wish you were coming. But you know what? We'll be back maybe. Well, no, we're going to be in South
I'll
Florida.
say this. I would rather trade a win for the third week of January than this Sunday. I'll just say that.
Okay. I ain't mad at you. I'm not mad at you. That's another Miami Dolphins First Down podcast on Dolphins Talk right here. Josh Moser, Stephen Daniels, myself. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next Tuesday on That's Another Miami Dolphins First Down.